The mind is an absolutely miraculous thing. Any scientist, any biologist who claims that they have nailed the human mind, who understand every component and how it works, is a bare-faced liar. There are some people who talk about neurons and neurology and sparks and connections and all the rest of it, but honestly, I'm not quite sure who invented the human mind. And I guess it would only be the inventor of the human mind who could actually accurately define how it's essentially structured. And we're talking about now you stepping on the journey towards developing a wise mind. All right? Because if you don't have a wise mind, you're going to have a different type of mind. Well, let us here take a little bit of time to explore the 3 different types of mind that we could be primarily operating out of. Remember, life is a developmental process. So we're always in the process of growing and improving and developing and becoming better. I'm going to suggest here that the wise mind, developing a wise mind, is the goal. If there was one destination, all right, this is it. One aim that we could strive for, let this be the one. The wise mind is a rare psychological state. All right, now this is only from a psychological perspective. If I was teaching you philosophy right now, we could say that the wise mind is a rare philosophical state, all right, but let's just go with psychological. That a person occupies in the context of their day-to-day life. The wise mind is the quiet, optimal mode of acting and thinking that is flexible, it is adaptive, and it's holistic. My goodness, does that make any sense to you whatsoever? Well, let's have a little look at what I might mean by this. Right, so before we look at what the wise mind might be, let us look at what the emotional mind is, because most people are able to relate to this one. So, the emotional mind tends to be a little bit regressive. What would happen if you were to walk into a sweet shop with a young child, and a young child looks at all these different flavours of candy, all the different sweets, all these, different things made of sugary goodness, and they say to you, I want, and start pointing out all the different packages of sweets that they would like to take home and eat all of the time, because there are some kids who would like nothing more than to eat candy and sweets and sugar all day long. But as grown up, as fully grown adults, we know that eating sugar all day is not a particularly healthy diet. It's not too overly nutritional, right? So what would we say? Well, because we know better, we would say, no child, you cannot have all that candy. You can perhaps have one item, which you can maybe have once you've had your dinner later on today. Because we are reasonable, aren't we, as adults? But what do you think child would then, or how would child respond if child really has heart set on having all the sweets in the sweet shop? Child's going to most likely enter into a bit of a regressive state. Going to start crying, right? Because this is our earliest regressive state, isn't it? We cry, we get upset, we have temper tantrums, we scream, when we don't get what we want. Could you imagine if babies could speak? I know babies can learn to speak, but if you can imagine, right? Babies exit the womb and there's one thing that they can say, only one thing, right? So instead of crying, they would say something, right? What do you think this could be? I'm not getting what I want. I'm not getting what I want. I'm not getting what I want. Someone give me what I want. I'm not getting what I want. Right, babies have a limited vocabulary, don't they? Right, so if we were to replace the screams and the cries with I'm not getting what I want, that would actually be quite accurate. So, then babies grow a little bit older, start to develop a vocabulary, and they learn how to ask for the things that they want, perhaps by the age of 2 or 3 or 5 or something like that. But what happens if mum and dad say no? Well, I'm not getting what I want. Well, I'm not getting what I want. Now, here's a crazy idea. What happens if we fast track 20 years? Right? We then have little baby has become 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 15, 20, is now 25 years old or 30 years old. And now this person asks someone for a promotion or for a pay rise or applies for a job or takes an exam, don't get what they want, don't have their expectations met. I'm not getting what I want. Now, there's an interesting idea here, and I don't know how okay you are with me being a little bit confrontational and challenging, but it's a question. Listen, I'm just asking questions here. That's all I'm doing. At what age and stage in life does emotional immaturity become an emotional disorder? Honestly, I don't know. I'm still working things out, right? If you ever figure it out, please feel free to let me know, right? I'm not saying anything. I'm just asking questions. So, the emotional mind is generally naturally regressive, where people, doesn't matter what age they are, end up regressing back to an earlier stage of their development, behaving in childlike ways in order to essentially get what they want. All right, some people earn a title of being narcissistic or controlling or authoritative or manipulative or something like this. All right, it's all regressive state, where people don't learn how to ask for what they want politely, maturely, and when they don't get what they want, end up emotionally reacting, right? It's part of the emotional mind. It tends to be a little bit unreasonable, doesn't it? When people are functioning out of the emotional part of their mind, being highly emotive, something like this, well, that's not the most effective way of winning friends and engaging with people. I mean, think about it. How much do you actually enjoy being around emotionally sporadic people? Right, regardless of how emotionally sporadic you may or may not be, right? Think about it. You're around someone who's just manically depressed, and what they do, they're talking about themselves, they're doom and gloom, they're all that kind of thing. When people behave like this, do they naturally kind of just draw you to them? Kind of like, are you kind of drawn towards these people? Kind of like some sort of magnetic attraction, or do you just like, oh no, not today. I can't spend time with you today. I've got enough of my own stuff going on without, having you burden your whole life on me also. All right. What I'm saying is emotionally led people who haven't yet entered this self-awareness journey generally tend to live quite disconnected lives. Why? Because being around highly emotional people is exhausting. It's really, really tiresome. All right. It's not enjoyable. All right. Why? Emotionally charged people tend to be reactive, right? I would never ever be willing to trust an emotionally charged person. Why? Because they tend to be sensitive, like highly sensitive. If they haven't yet entered onto this self-awareness journey yet, you might say something to them. I might say something to them. What happens? Because they're not in control of their mind, they're not managing and regulating the thoughts that kind of are popping into their heads. They make an automatic assumption, and then just kind of assume that this assumption they've made is true, then act as if the assumption is true. And the next thing, you and I or other people end up being judged and assumed the worst of. Why? Because people are just reactive to what they think's going on, rather sometimes than to what's actually going on, right? So listen, I'm doing my best to be as general here as what I possibly can be. So you understand this kind of emotionally charged way of living life. It's the emotional mind. But there's another part of our mind, right? There's then the reasonable, some people might refer to as the rational part of our mind, all right? Where people become more drawn to intellect, academics, theorists, people who like to debate, information, facts. You're going to find them on quiz shows, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, things like that. And ironically, these people can also end up living quite disconnected lives. Why? It's kind of like some people. Now, I did live in this way for probably a couple of years, where I became so focused on acquiring more knowledge, acquiring more information. The more knowledge I grew in, I ended up actually deeming myself quite irrelevant to many people that I had in my life back then. I really struggled to relate and connect with other people because of all this information that I had. I found really complex ideas interesting, engaging. And the more that I delved, the more that I ended up reflecting, the more immersed I became in this world of contemplative philosophical reflection, the less relevant I became to the other people in my life. All right, so sharing of my own experience here as well. It's great to be informative. It's great to be informed. Knowledge is great. Being in touch with one's emotions is also great. But it's good to find that sweet spot. It's good to find that balance, that somewhere in between. All right? It's great to be focused, but then it's also great to be relaxed. All right, so what is the alternative to being fully emotional or fully rational or reasonable? Becoming wise. All right, wise is the sweet spot in between. If there was a spectrum, at one end of the spectrum we're completely emotional, at the other end of the spectrum you've got completely rational. Sometimes highly rational people can be completely emotionally disengaged. All right, sometimes emotionally charged people become completely unrelatable, full stop. All right, so we're looking for the sweet spot. And this gives us opportunity to grow and mature and become wise. All right, this is when we start to discipline our minds to become naturally more reflective, rather than agreeing or disagreeing by saying that's right, that's wrong, this is good, that's bad, right? We seek to discover, we take time to understand new perspectives, new ideologies, new philosophies about life that perhaps we've never considered before, because this is how we become more aware of ourselves. As we become more aware of ourselves, we become more enlightened as to the extent of the options that we have to become different, to live life in a different, more useful way. If we do not know a more effective way of living life, then we're just going to cling on to what we have. We're going to remain consistent to how we've always been. But the second we can see someone else, or we can identify a more effective way in which we can live our lives, of course, we naturally gravitate towards that, because on a very, very basic level, we're all growing in wisdom. It's just the case that some people move a little bit faster on the journey than others, all right? So, we become wiser human beings as we become more reflective, as we start to put together the jigsaw puzzle pieces of our lives. Rather than just saying, I am an anxious person, I am a stressed person, I am the labels that the medical professional assigned onto me or the mental health guru gave me, I am this disorder, I am that condition, we put all that stuff aside and we ask the question, why? What's triggering this? Where is it coming from? Is there a cause to this effect that I'm experiencing? Or am I just a victim? Am I a helpless, disempowered victim? Because those people who assume they are helpless, disempowered victims, there's nothing that any of us can do for them anyway. If that's you right now, well, you are doomed. There's no one in this world who can do anything for you, apart from you. Right, but listen, this is some good news. Right, becoming masters of our own destiny as we reflect to honestly and accurately consider the part that we're playing in determining the outcomes and the results of our lives. If you're not experiencing the outcomes that you want to be experiencing, well, guess who's responsible for this? Right? If you've got a big problem in your life, whose problem is it? If you've got a big tension in your life, whose tension is it? Until tensions and problems have owners, problems and tensions tend to remain unresolved. All right? Listen to me, check me out just being the voice of reason here, all right? But listen, the world needs this. This is like some serious, uncommon sense. But cognitive behavioural therapy was never designed to be some sort of academic theory or irrelevant concept. It was designed to be completely relevant in a way that we can actually relate to these ideas, build them into our lives and grow and mature as human beings. So that at some point we might even be in a position where we're setting a positive example as role models for other people who haven't yet started on the journey. Right? There's a bit of a vision for your future, isn't it? You know, what's that old saying? That a person, a man or a woman without vision can end up perpetuating around in circles for many years in the present, or something like that. Anyway, so we become a bit more philosophical. We don't become philosophers. We don't have to define ourselves as philosophers, but we just start considering the more important things of life. What's the purpose of life? What's the meaning of life? Like, come on, I'm just coming up with some big ideas here. All right? Some people get lost in this as well. You know, some people say there is no purpose to life. There is no meaning to life. Of course there is. All right? As human beings, we are meaning-making machines, which means that we're essentially assigning meaning onto every single experience that we have. It's the meanings that we assign onto our experiences that give us memories. All right? It's the meanings that we assign onto our experiences that trigger emotional responses. Think about it. If you were to just identify your ideal spouse or partner, your dream man or your dream woman, and you pluck up the courage to ask them on a date, and you get down on one knee and you say, will you be my Valentine, or will you go on a date with me, or something like this, and you get met with a response. They say, no, I'm not going on a date with you. All right, how do you respond? How do you respond? All right, this experience could mean that you're a worthless, unlovable, unattractive person, or it could mean that this person is just not the right person for you, that this person isn't yet at the same level of maturity as you. It might be the case that this person's quite judgmental. If you've asked a person for a date or out for dinner and they've said no without even getting to know you, well, that's quite narrow-minded, all right? So, bully for you. But listen, as we become naturally more philosophical, we're not contemplating the stars and anything weird and wacky, we're just asking ourselves bigger questions. Rather than boxing ourselves in, I'm this, I'm that, I'm the next thing, oh my goodness, well, what does this actually mean? What is the most useful way of interpreting this experience? Guess what? If you do not like how it is that you've interpreted an event or an experience, you can interpret it differently. If you do not like your interpretation of what I'm saying right now, if you're taking offence at something, change your mind. Interpret it in a different way until you like what I'm saying. All right, seriously, the mind can do this. It is that flexible. It's just sometimes we get stuck in inflexible or unflexible ways. All right, so contemplate. Contemplate, contemplate, contemplate. I reckon I must spend most of my days contemplating. I'm contemplating right now, right? I'm having a contemplation inside of my head as I'm doing my best to communicate something to you, all right? I'm not speaking from any scripts here. I'm kind of literally winging this, making it up as I go. Well, I'm obviously not making it all up. I kind of know what I'm talking about. But what I'm saying is the words that come out of my mouth are quite reflective. There's something that I know I want to share with you here. There's something I know I want to help you understand, because I know that if you come to understand this, you're going to become better equipped, better acquainted with yourself, and this can really help you to grow as a person. Right? So I'm contemplating, well, what's the most useful next thing for me to say? We can live life in a perpetually this perpetual state of contemplation, whilst also remaining completely engaged in life, in the present. Some people go into this whacked out place of reflection where they just become completely irrelevant to people. But it is possible to go in the opposite direction, where we remain in a reflective, contemplative state, but whilst also being relevant. All right? When we jump into the emotional bandwagon, we become quite irrelevant. If we become into the overly academic and rational bandwagon, again, we become really quite irrelevant and disconnected. But as we become wise, we start saying what we see, we start talking openly, a little bit less reserved and significantly more relatable and relevant for other people. All right, does this make sense? It comes as we operate freely from the wise mind. Right? We talk about what we see, we talk about our experience, and we talk less about what I think and how I feel. Do you want to know how it is that you identify someone who operates out of their emotional mind, or how it is that you identify someone who operates outside of the rational mind? Because the bulk of the words that come out of their mouth will be, and I just feel, and I just feel, and I just feel, and I just feel. Oh, so we're not going to be having a particularly reflective conversation today then. All right, and again, rational. Well, I just think, and I just think, and I just think. And it seems to me that we're not going to be having a particularly reflective conversation today because you've already made up your mind. All right, but as we enter into this wise mind, we become more attuned to opportunity and possibility. And you know what? Things might not necessarily be as we've decided that they are. All right, which allows us to become more growth-orientated and centered instead. Because I, like you like me, we can change our mind about anything the second that we are willing to make up our minds and decide that this pattern of thinking isn't serving us.